Once again, welcome to the webinar on Attack Surface Management. Before we begin the session, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat box and we'll be answering it at the end of the Q&A session. So without any further ado, let me welcome Mr. Jasir, who is our cybersecurity head of Novatic UAE, to give the introduction. Mr. Jasir, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Good morning. So I'm happy to welcome you all to today's webinar on attack surface management. So in today's digital world, organizations are increasingly exposed to cyber threats. So understanding and managing your attack surface is crucial in protecting your organization's valuable digital assets. So at Noventic, we strive to help our customers to secure their digital assets. And as part of this commitment, we had joined hands with Security Brigade, a pioneer in this field of helping customers secure their digital assets using their digital risk management platform, which is called ShadowMap. And this webinar will provide you with a comprehensive overview of attack surface management, including its importance, key components, and the best practices. So without any further delay, I would like to welcome and introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Yash Kadakia, the founder of Security Brigade, a leading cybersecurity consulting firm, and ShadowMap, an award-winning digital risk management platform. So he has nearly 20 years of experience in cybersecurity domain, advising enterprise leaderships like CIOs and CISOs globally. And under his leadership, ShadowMap was recognized as the most innovative product in cybersecurity by the Data Security Council of India. And Yash is a recognized innovator and entrepreneur, having spoken at industry conferences and published researches on topics like data privacy, intelligence activities, etc. He is also an active member of Tech Advocates, NASCOM, DSCI, etc. And now I will leave the floor to Yash to take us through the overall offering of ShadowMap. Over to you, Yash.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Jasir and Anna. So hey everyone, to start the sort of talk, right, the ideas, I'll run you through a bit of an introduction about the platform. And then we're going to talk about use cases, and I have live demos that I can show you with the platform as well. Right? As Anna said, any questions, you can put them in the chat box. We'll try to answer them along the way if possible, or we'll address them towards the end. So the intent of today's webinar is to talk about lessons from the largest breaches. So instead of just walking you through the product itself and the features, capabilities, etc., we thought it would be better to use some of the past breaches as examples or use cases and understand how ShadowMap can keep you out of the headlines, right? So that was sort of the format that we've taken. Okay. To start with, I'll give you a little bit of introduction about what the platform is, what it does, and how it sort of covers the range of areas that are within attack surface management. So one, of course, so ShadowMap has a lot of different modules. One is attack surface management, which is looking at your footprint, right? What applications, what network services, what IP pods, cloud services, SaaS services, endpoint devices, IoT devices, what do you have exposed to the internet? Where is it exposed? Is it known? Is it unknown? Is it appropriately placed in your asset inventory? So tracking those sort of areas. Dark web monitoring, of course, tracking the dark web in terms of data leaks, compromised credentials, all of those different areas. Data leak monitoring, so things like S3 buckets and GitHub, Docker Hub, PDF files, PDF hosting sites, Dropbox, etc. We also have a threat intelligence module built into the platform so that we can correlate threat intelligence feeds with your actual attack surface area. That's one of the areas where we find is very useful, where instead of just doing attack surface, once I know your surface, I can correlate that with threat intel and then give you some actionable intelligence there. So I'll show you some examples of that as well. Brand protection, takedowns for phishing, domain squatting, etc. We also have security scorecard and benchmarking. So the idea is that because we're doing all of these different areas, we can also then look for what is a scorecard for you based on industry trends and where do you rank. And we can also benchmark that against third parties. So where do you rank against your peers, competitors, etc. vendor risk management. So we cover your supply chain risk as well. And then last, vulnerability alerts. Right? So that's just the overall sort of capabilities of ShadowMap as a platform and what it covers through all of its different modules. Okay. So when we look at, our customers, their incidents, the incident responses that we've done, red team assessments that we've done, we've typically seen a few different areas that today are becoming the biggest sort of risks that lead to active data leaks and compromises happening, right? So ransomware, of course, is number one for pretty much everybody. Data breaches where data leaks out through different channels, IoT attacks, social engineering, supply chain attacks, and zero-day attacks. So the goal today is to try and cover our attack management platform, ShadowMap, through these use cases and talk specifically about how ShadowMap can help you tackle these sets of problems that are obviously sort of everyone's priorities right now. Okay, so I'll cover a couple of different some use cases based on these, right? And I'll show you live demos for the platform. So we'll be switching between the presentation and the platform itself. So I can show you how to use the platform, what kind of data comes back, and how it will actually help you tackle these sort of problems, right? So talking about ransomware, right? So we've taken real headlines from the news and different examples. So last year, or I think early this year, Accenture was hit by, last year, Accenture was hit by a fairly large ransomware attack through Lockbit. And as a result of the ransomware, they went and published a bunch of data. And obviously then maybe work with Accenture to sort of manage that incident, right? Now, when you look at how this incident was caused, what were the root causes behind this particular incident? There were two key things that took place, right? One, there was a known vulnerability in a software. So the hackers found, and this is very common for Lockbit, where they scan for known vulnerabilities and try to exploit those, get insight, and then move from there. So what Lockbit did in this case was, A, they exploited a known vulnerability that was exposed in their public footprint. And B, they used employee credentials that they got on the dark web and used them to access VPN. So first they could use VPN to access the network. Then they could use the exploit to compromise the systems, and then they could sort of move from there. So that was one of the sort of common trends that we see with ransomware. As I go into the different use cases, you will see as well how these two are fairly recurring themes. And I'll talk a little bit about how ShadowMap helps you with these specific areas, right? So I'm just going to switch over to the ShadowMap platform itself. So this is a completely demo portal that we have, dummy data that we've generated for the platform for this demo purpose. Now, as you see, ShadowMap it's a fairly vast platform, right? We've got attack surface, we've got brand protection, data leaks, dark web, threat intel, threat vulnerabilities, security ratings, SLAs, takedowns, vendor risk management, etc. Right? So I'll try to cover only the specific areas to this use case, and through that we'll cover most of the platform. And then I can, of course, answer any questions that you have. What you see here is essentially just the dashboard, right? That every day customers log in and ShadowMap gives them an updated dashboard. Some of the modules update every hour, some update every minute, some update once a day. So all the different modules will keep changing, right? Now, when I spoke about the Accenture breach, one challenge that they had was that there was a known vulnerability that was exploited. And whenever we work with different customers, the biggest challenge when you talk about large customers, right, is how do we manage our footprint? How do we know what is actually available for us, right? So when you look at this demo portal, what it does is, one, every single day it scans your complete footprint. So it knows every IP address, every web application, every network service, every port, everything that you have open to the internet, whether it's on the cloud, whether it's on-prem, whether it's at a partner, whether it's a SaaS service, it's able to identify all of those things as part of your footprint. And it then starts telling you these are all the things that are currently online. Right? It prioritizes them. And the idea is that as a customer, you would review it and say good, bad, ugly, this is supposed to be public, this is not supposed to be public. So if any internal things are online, you can immediately filter it out and take action, right? So say, for example, if I want to look here, I can see that we have tagged 10 staging applications. I can click through again, and it will immediately show me the 10 staging applications that are currently online. So in this case, demo, staging, vapor staging, beta, etc. Right? So as a customer, you are constantly aware of your footprint. It will keep telling you that these are the things that are new today, these were new yesterday. So the number one goal for attack surface is to know your attack surface so that we can keep saying this is good, this is a problem, we should shut it down, this is something we should restrict, and let you manage it, right? You can assign app owners, you can map it to development teams, etc., so that a comprehensive inventory is maintained. If you want to know what are all the assets we have open on AWS right now that are owned by the marketing teams, you can filter for those things, get that data, right? So that's one part of what we're looking to do. But as we do that, we also come to know your network footprint. So when we're tracking web applications, we're tracking mobile application, we're also tracking your network footprint, right? So which versions are running, where are they running, and we correlate this data with threat intelligence as well. So tomorrow, if there is a new vulnerability in VSFTPD, for example, right, immediately ShadowMap would know that you have VSFTPD 3.0.3 running. You can click through and see exactly where it's running. So which IP address, which server, where is it currently available? And you can then, once you have understood those details, you will be able to also see if it is actively vulnerable, and then you can take relevant action there, right? So it tells you what are the current vulnerabilities, other misconfigurations, is it vulnerable to that CV, etc. So it will track that for you. So the first part of the problem is they were exploited by a known vulnerability. So as part of that, what ShadowMap does is when we scan your entire attack surface, we also then scan for vulnerabilities. So then you can see this section called alerts, and I'll switch to a broader view. You can actually see it then identifies all the different misconfigurations, vulnerabilities. So whether it is something like, a critical CVE that is exploitable from the outside, whether it's a misconfiguration in an S3 bucket, whether it's a misconfig in one of your applications, whether it's a login pages that don't have encryption implemented, API keys leaking, there are thousands of signatures, right? So we track these signatures. We tell you what the issue is, what is the impact of the issue, what is the recommendation, we give you code examples. And then, of course, we tell you exactly where the problem is, right? So these are the different IP addresses. You can click through, see what's there on these IP addresses, understand the context of it. And the nice part is that the scan is happening every day. So because the scan is happening every day, as you close the vulnerability, in the next scan, it would be updated as closed and would go away. So the advantage here is that we're continuously scanning your footprint. So we know exactly what's come online, even that you may not be aware of, right? Maybe some teams spun up an IP address, spun up a dev instance, test instance. And B, if there is something critical, immediately we can throw an alert for it, let you know that it's misconfigured, it's vulnerable. And what we find with our customers is that a lot of times we find vulnerabilities and assets that are not currently being scanned by their Qualys or their Nesys or anything of that sort, right? Those are shadow IT or blind spots. So because we are doing discovery also, we find them, we scan them, we raise alerts, and they can improve their processes. So that's one part of what we're looking at, right? Where we're looking at what is your footprint, what are the corresponding vulnerabilities, if any, and we're continuously tracking it so that as soon as something of this sort happens, we can alert you and let you know. So that's one part of what the platform does. Now, the second piece in the Accenture case that I spoke about was that their users were compromised by dark web credentials. Somebody's credentials got compromised on the dark web, and through that, the attackers used those credentials and were able to access the VP. And this is again the real story of how that breach went down, based on what Accenture and the attackers published. So if I click through, we have, when you look at dark web, we have a lot of different data sources, right? We track third-party data breaches. So, if LinkedIn or XYZ website gets hacked, we can track that also and tell you that it's happened. We also track any dark web, ransomware websites or forums that are talking about you. But we have a very unique feature that we call malware compromised users, where we track any of your users' computers that are currently compromised by malware. So we can tell you that this particular user, so desktop T2A7H43, is currently compromised by malware. This is their IP address, their username, what Windows were they using, which country are they based in, which malware compromised them, and what was the date of the breach that happened. And you can then track it, you can action it, you can download the entire data package files. So you can actually download the raw files from this user's computer And this is something most other platforms don't have. The advantage here is that third-party data breaches are normally from somebody else that got compromised, right? But malware compromised computers and users are your users whose either personal device, corporate device, or phone got compromised through a malicious APK, etc. And using that, the attacker was able to compromise that particular, get those credentials from their browser. So when the malware runs on the machine, and I'll show you an example here, right? That will sort of help you understand. But if I just take a random example here, right? If I'm downloading this package, you can see over here that the entire package file gets downloaded. I can open that up. And you can see these are the actual raw package files that the hackers stole on the dark web, right? So they stole all the users' information. So where was the malware exe? Which user was there? What location? What antivirus did they have? What computer they're using? And then all of their passwords, all of their cookies. Oftentimes we see screenshots, we see credit card information, we see all of that. So as those things come, we track it, and then we immediately let you know that your users have been impacted, your customers have been impacted, so that you can change the credentials. When we do our red team assessments, in 90% of cases, if we have 100 passwords, there will be at least 5 that are still working passwords. So our red team will often use this data to break into customers to then carry out their red team assessment. So which is why it's really critical. And you see most ransomware breaches, etc., will originate or use these sort of passwords, either as part of the lateral movement or as part of the initial entry point when they're compromising the user. So that's one really key area that we monitor, that a lot of customers find value here. We also have ADFS integrations here, so we can actually compare these passwords with your Azure AD, ADFS, and tell you if any passwords are working in real time, so that you don't have to do that manual processing. So that's another piece of what we're looking at. Malware compromised computers, third-party data breaches. So Sheen got hacked, or Yatra.com got hacked, or Trello got hacked, etc. We track those as well, track those passwords as well, and then we can let you know that that has happened, right? As part of the dark web monitoring that we do. Like I said earlier, we also track forums. So any forums, if somebody's trying to sell your data, your information, we track that as well, and then we'll let you know that somebody's selling your data on the dark web right now. This is the data that's being sold. This is the information there. We'll help you coordinate that process if you want to negotiate, if you want to take down, if you want to understand how credible that threat actor is. All that is part of the platform, and we'll help you sort of understand those things and track it, right? You can again track it through different processes. So investigating, legitimate breach, review, so not a legitimate breach, and so on and so forth. And all of this is done in real time. So if 10 times a day new breach comes out, we'll alert you 10 times a day to let you know that that has happened. And you can take corresponding action there, right? So we can track, in this case, as an example, we've taken a Virgin Mobile breach that happened a month ago, right? For the Latin America market, somebody was selling their access. So again, we immediately tracked that, got an alert. And if it was a customer's data, an immediate alert would shoot up to them with the threat actor profile, with what we typically see with this sort of breach, what our team recommends doing, all of those sort of actions as part of that. Okay. So in the Accenture example, having a platform like Shadowmap would have made sure that anytime a known vulnerability of this nature is publicly available, immediately an alert is shot out. If we are seeing threat intelligence alerts, we are seeing that, and I'll talk about this in a few slides as well. If we are seeing that attackers are exploiting a particular CVE, and we see that you have some infra that correlates to that CVE, we'll shoot an alert out for that as well. And number 3, anytime your users, employees, partners, supply chain vendors, etc., are compromised and their credentials are available for sale, we track that and we can shoot alerts to you to let you know that that has happened as well. So that you can immediately then change the credentials, take action there, and minimize the window of opportunity for the attacker to use those credentials. So that's the first sort of ransomware use case that I wanted to sort of touch upon, right? There are a few other ways that Shadowmap can help you with ransomware as well. I'll touch upon those as well as we sort of go forward, right? We track if any of your IPs are known to be compromised. So if there is a breach that happens in one small branch location and that IP is compromised connecting to CNC servers, We can track that, raise alerts for that. So there's a lot of different ways where we can raise those early warning signs before the ransomware becomes a much bigger problem and spreads internally. So that's one sort of common use case that we see with customers, right? Now, talking about the next sort of scenario, cloud and data attacks. So as you see, there's a big part of what ShadowMap does is focused on data leaks, right? We're focusing on S3 buckets or GitHub, Docker Hub, Bitbucket, etc. So we're looking for code, we're looking for data, we're looking for confidential files, API details, API credentials, hard-coded credentials. We're looking at all of those areas to track if any of those are exposed. So a few years ago, Uber was compromised, and very, very public compromise that happened, where the hacker had published a lot of information. That breach happened through a few different ways, right? So one, they purchased credentials for that employee from the dark web. So again, the exact same compromised user scenario I spoke about earlier, where somebody in the Philippines had their password stolen through malware, and the attacker stole that password and used that password to log into their VPN. They also found on some public platforms, they found PowerShell scripts, Microsoft PowerShell scripts that contained admin credentials hard-coded inside those PowerShell scripts. So using the VPN, they got into the network. Once they were inside, they had admin credentials, so they could use that to then start compromising other users and moving laterally inside the network. And they could then go and compromise internal systems, SaaS systems, cloud systems, pretty much everything they had access to for at least, I think, about 12 to 15 hours, if I remember right. So that's another area that we typically cover, right? So of course, the purchased employee credentials would have been something that we would have immediately raised an alert for and notified the customer of. But I'll talk about the data leak aspect of it as well, right? Since that's another area that we do a lot of interesting monitoring. So, yeah. Just give me 1 second. Yeah. So, oh, sorry about that. I'll just go to the data leak section. I'm going to open up a few of the modules. So you can see we track code repositories, we track leaked credentials, we track S3 buckets, Docker containers, leaked files, leaked API, shortener URLs. So we track a lot of different areas within data leaks, right? Now, the idea here is that we continuously monitor GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, any open such platforms. And we monitor every single repository that they have opened to the internet. So about 400 million repositories, I think was the last number I remember, that we track on a continuous basis. And when I say continuous, it's almost every hour. And as those repositories change and the content changes, we monitor that. And anytime content comes online that relates to our customers or your keywords, essentially, whatever the keywords are, your brand names, your executives, your anything that you want to essentially track, right? We will immediately trigger an alert and let you know that a repository has come online. So in this case, there's some repository that is mentioned one of our domains. So you can see that we are tracking that, and I can immediately pick it up. We know who has uploaded it. We know when it was uploaded. If it's something that includes our confidential data, we can trigger a takedown as well to actually take it offline. So it's critical. We want to take it offline because it contains copyright infringement or the sensitive data there, and we can trigger it. And then within 24 to 48 hours, it'll actually go offline. And there's a whole process built in, both automated and manual, to get those things taken offline. So that's one part, right? So if Uber was using ShadowMap at the time, any of their repositories that were exposing PowerShell scripts, etc., would get picked up. And if there are any secrets, so we're not just looking for repositories, but we're also looking for secrets. Does the repository contain passwords, API tokens, PEM files, key files, anything that's sensitive? If yes, it would show up under the leak section, and an immediate alert would come up saying that this particular AWS key is leaked, or this particular credentials are leaked, tokens are leaked, etc., right? So A, we want to know anytime the customer has any data that's publicly exposed. And B, we want to trigger an alert if that repository contains any sensitive data, so that they can immediately take action and go from there. So that's the basic idea, right? And you can customize your keywords, you can customize your which brands are monitored, which keywords are monitored. You can customize for your executives. You can choose what you want to protect as part of this capability. Going forward, same thing. We also look for S3 buckets. In this case, Laravel is one of the keywords we put in the demo portal. So you can see every single S3 repository, S3, GCP, Azure storage blobs, DigitalOcean blobs, etc. So lots of different capabilities are all monitored, and any of them come online. We track that it's come online. When was it first seen? When was it last seen? How many files are open as part of that? And then, of course, we know exactly when it goes offline as well. So if any of your data, files, sensitive information is leaking through S3 buckets, immediately alerts will shoot out. We will let you know that that has happened. And then we will let you know that it can be taken down as well if somebody else is hosting it. And you can, of course, you can say, hey, this is supposed to be okay. This is supposed to be online. You can add comments. So you could say, for example, we spoke to team XYZ and they have approved it, attach screenshot of the approval email, etc. So it also lets you document your inventory, right? So that we have a clear record of why is it online, when is it online, who does it belong to, does it need to be taken offline? You can assign it to somebody within your team as well, or a particular unit you can assign it to. So you want to assign it to the SOC, for example, right? You can trigger assign to the SOC. The SOC will get notified. They can get an alert through their ticketing platform, however you want to integrate it. So it tracks all of that. Right? So in that Uber example, leaked files again. So if whether their code or their credentials were leaked through S3 buckets, through GitHub, Docker Hub, image files, leaked files, so different PDF files, Excel files, CSV files, etc. All of those would have triggered alerts and would have immediately been notified. In the same way, we also monitor any third-party API platforms. So Postman, etc. So if your API details or anything leaks and is publicly available, we track that also. Tell you that this is the link where it's online. You can take action, you can close it, and you can see what, in this case, again, there are risk ratings, right? High, low, medium. So in this case, it is a high risk because the access token is hard-coded. So in that same way, we track it, right? If there are credentials, passwords, tokens, API keys, you will see a higher risk alert coming so that you can action it immediately. And if it is something that is not critical, it will come as a medium, low, and so on. So any different channel where your secrets information are leaking, we would track it, throw an alert to you so that before an attacker can find it, you are able to sort of respond. And it works in real time. So today your developer or your partner puts a GitHub repo online with some data. Within the next hour, you would get an alert saying this has happened and you could take action and close it down so that before anybody else can abuse it or use it, you can sort of address it. That's the primary goal. So across the platform, as you see, the main intent is rapid response. We want to detect and respond to things very, very quickly so that as soon as something bad happens, we are throwing alerts to you. And we also have different ways for alerts to go. We have SIM integrations, we have emails, we have ticketing integrations, ServiceNow integrations, Jira integrations, Slack and Teams integrations. So it can come to you in different formats. It can come as a phone call, it can come as an SMS, it can come as a WhatsApp. So it can come in many different ways so that as soon as something bad happens, the right person is notified and the action can be taken quickly to minimize the risk. That's another sort of scenario. And there's a scenario we see. These are scenarios that we see every day with our customers. I'm just using some public examples to sort of show the different use cases. Now, if I look at the third scenario, I think this is one that everyone is familiar with, right? The SolarWinds breach, where SolarWinds was compromised, and using SolarWinds, they were able to compromise about 18,000 different customers around the world, including some of the largest organizations. So I'll talk a little bit about how SolarWinds could have prevented the breach as well, and how SolarWinds customers using our threat intelligence platform could have been notified of this breach as soon as possible and got alerts based on threat intel feeds and could have minimized their risk. So for those who aren't familiar with the SolarWinds breach, I'll just sort of give you a little backstory of how it happened, right? So SolarWinds, as part of their DevOps pipeline, had TeamCity that was deployed inside a virtual machine. It was running inside a virtual machine. And that virtual machine over the years had basically become shadow IT. It was being used in the process, but because it was automated, nobody was managing it. So it wasn't getting updates, it wasn't being upgraded, any of that sort, right? There was a TeamCity vulnerability that came out. So that's one of the signatures that you will see in ShadowMap over here as well, right? So you will see TeamCity 2023 authentication bypass. So there was a TeamCity vulnerability that came out, and the hackers used that vulnerability to compromise that particular VM that was being used for TeamCity. They compromised that virtual machine. Inside that virtual machine, in the TeamCity settings, they injected malware into a particular DLL file that SolarWinds was using. So whenever the next time SolarWinds was being compiled, it got compiled with the malware, and that malicious exe got sent to 18,000 customers through updates, and 18,000 customers were running a malware-laden version of SolarWinds, which would report back to the hackers through a command and control server, and the hackers could then control and run commands on those servers as well that were compromised. This was there for almost, I think, 3 to 4 years in live before anybody found out. And when they investigated, they found 100 customers were actively compromised, where the hackers were actually using the backdoor to compromise these 100 customers, a little bit more than 100. So that was the story of the SolarWinds breach. Right now, getting back into how this could have been prevented using ShadowMap, I'll talk about a few different cases. Right. So one is the most obvious, where if TeamCity was open to the internet, whether it's shadow IT, whether it's known, unknown, we would have found it. We literally scan every single IP address on the internet multiple times a day. So we scan all 4 billion IP addresses, I think close to about 7 or 8 times a day now. So if it's online, you would find it, you would pick it up, throw an alert to you saying one of your IP addresses TeamCity, or one of your subdomains is running TeamCity, and then notify you that it's vulnerable, there's authentication bypass, with threat intel feeds, with our signatures, with all of that, right? And come back to you on that particular issue. So that's one that we would have immediately prevented. Now, second scenario is where you are the customer for SolarWinds, right? You are a customer, you don't know. It's not anything that's your vulnerability, right? Your SolarWinds updated on a regular cycle. When it updated, as part of that update, you got a malicious version of SolarWinds that got deployed, right? So how do you find out about that? So we also have threat intelligence built into the platform, where we continuously track what are the latest vulnerabilities, what are the latest data breaches, what are the latest exploits, what are threat actors doing in the wild. We correlate this data with industry sectors, with countries, with who's being targeted, etc. And based on that, we can throw alerts to you saying that we are seeing, from CISA, we saw an alert saying that SolarWinds is currently compromised and is malicious. And that would have immediately shot to you because your footprint would have shown SolarWinds exposed to the internet. So anytime new vulnerabilities, new issues, new critical issues come, and that is part of your footprint. So say, for example, if any of our customers are using Zimbra Collaboration Suite right now, they would have immediately got this threat intel alert saying that there is currently active exploitation happening. These are all the places where you are running Zimbra Collaboration Suite. So as part of network services, you can see we would track that. And we would tell them these are all the places where you're running this. It's publicly open. And if it was vulnerable, it would come in the vulnerability section as well. So that you are fully aware of that this is happening. We would also track this as part of our IOC feed. So we also have sticks and tags IOC feeds built into the platform. So if you have any SIM or SOAR or any of those platforms, you can also consume ShadowMap's threat intel feed. And this signature of their command and control servers, their IP addresses, the binary files would all come as part of the threat intel feed as well, so that you can immediately action it and get notified internally of that lateral movement happening as well and take corresponding action there. And that's just some of the different ways where ShadowMap would have helped prevent the SolarWinds breach and to make sure that you don't have a similar incident of this nature as well. So moving forward to the next set of attacks, right? Zero-day attacks. So again, every sysadmin, every CISO's worst nightmare, right? There's very little you can do to prevent it. You could have WAF deployed, or you could have an IPS deployed, and that will minimize chances of a successful exploitation. But there's otherwise very little you can do to, your EDR, etc. might detect it, but very, very little you can do to prevent it from happening, right? And it's going to happen to every company out there. So, and every major vendor obviously has this problem, right? I don't want to pick on Fortinet, but I'm just using an example. So, as an example here, a couple of months ago, in fact, right, in Feb, Most of you, whoever uses Fortinet might recall there were a couple of very critical vulnerabilities that came out in Fortinet, where an attacker from the outside, if you had VPN management console open to the internet, could exploit that vulnerability and take complete access for your server. Right? So what happens is, as part of Shadowman, like I mentioned earlier, we immediately, the threat intel feed would have thrown an alert to customers saying that you have, Fortinet, in this case, for example, SonicWall, available to the public internet. And these are the places where it's currently available. So even if an exploit is not available, sorry about that. If an exploit is not available or a signature is not available, immediately alerts would shoot out saying, based on the CVE, based on the threat intelligence, we are seeing that Fortinet is currently being exploited, and we would track that and notify you saying that because you're running Fortinet right now, we can alert you that we are seeing chatter that Fortinet is currently being exploited or is vulnerable. These are the places where you have Fortinet running. And that's very interesting because I'll give you an example, right? When this Fortinet situation really happened, our team, our managed service team, the 24/7 managed service team, immediately notified all customers that were running Fortinet publicly. So emails went out to all the customers saying these are the IP addresses that are currently vulnerable, these are the different locations, etc. And at least half the customers came back to me, to the team, and said, this particular IP does not belong to us. And then we looked at the evidence, right? We looked at why did ShadowMap say that this belongs to you? And in every single case, we were able to come back to the customer and say, it does belong to you. We know it belongs to you because here you can see the IP range is owned by you, it's owned by a subsidiary, the subdomain is there that's pointing to it, or you can see after the vulnerability is exploited, the users or credentials that are configured in Fortinet belong to you. So a lot of times what happens is, and this is true for most companies, most larger companies, right? It's as you have subsidiaries and different global regions, different IT teams, different regional locations, offices, branch offices, etc. It becomes really, really hard to track what is actually your footprint that is online, right? Because it's constantly changing. The teams are spinning new things up on the cloud. There are new things going up on SaaS all the time. There are new devices being deployed. It becomes really, really hard to maintain that asset inventory well and accurately. So one of the things that we try to do is by continuously having this real-time data where anytime something new comes up, we will track it. We are able to make sure the customer knows something is there, even if they don't know it's currently there, right? And that helps in a lot. And we've seen real-world cases where it's prevented so many issues because if the customer wasn't aware, they obviously wouldn't have patched it either, right? So it would have been a complete blind spot. So that's another set of issues that we're able to sort of prevent, right? Of course, the threat intel would also tell you that you are an oil and gas company, and that oil and gas sector is actively being targeted by Chinese state actors from Wolf Icon, Typhoon. So we would track all of that as well, right? So all that gets tracked and comes to you, not just that there is a vulnerability, the threat intel, the context, how likely is it that it's going to get attacked, and all of that context comes in. So that can really help you understand what does your industry look like, who in your industry has currently got compromises, who has ransomware currently, which vendor has ransomware. So all that context and that story comes around as well when these threat intelligence alerts are coming to you. So before I sort of go forward, right, I'll talk about sorry. So actually, as part of the supply chain attack, I actually missed one part. I'll just go back for a second, right? So when I'm talking about supply chain or any of these vulnerabilities, right, even the CISA Fortinet vulnerability, the challenge, one of the biggest challenges customers have is how do we prevent this from our supply chain? So it might not be you who's vulnerable, right? It might be your call center partner, it might be your software development partner, might be your hosting partner, might be X, Y, and Z, right? So how do you track when infra that is related to you is impacted, even if it is not your own infra? And that's one key sort of challenge that that we see, right? So we actually have a module called called vendor risk management, where we can track any number of, and this is all again dummy data just for an example's sake, right? But we can track any number of vendors across the world. So you can plug in any company you want to plug in to understand what is happening with your different vendors, right? So if there is a big dark web leak that happens related to some particular company, you will get an alert. If there's a big data leak or a lot of vulnerabilities, you will get an alert. If there are phishing pages related to that company, you will get an alert. So you can add an unlimited number of vendors into the platform so that you can then monitor what those vendors currently look like, what is their risk scoring, so you can contextualize and prioritize who are the top 10 vulnerable vendors, who are the top 15 vulnerable vendors. So once you understood that data, it helps you uh, prioritize which vendors you need to invest into, right? So you can, when you're adding a vendor, you can add tags. Oh, sorry, request a vendor. When you can select priorities, you can select tags. So you can then understand how do they impact your business, right? Maybe it's part of your manufacturing supply chain, or it's part of your IT management. So you can add all of those relevant tags to every single vendor that you're adding to the platform, so that when a new ransomware alert or a new data breach or a new vulnerability comes up in your vendors, you will get alerts to notify you. You will be able to see the details. You will be able to notify your vendor, and that can be automated. We also have a feature coming out right now where your vendors can log into the platform and see their own scorecards and understand where they stand. What we have seen a lot of customers do is we have seen customers that will actually reach out to their business teams. So one of our banking customers, for example, does this, right? They have about 900 vendors that they have added in the system. They will reach out to their business teams and say, these 10 vendors that are doing marketing for you, say social media or something, have a very low risk score. So we either get the vendors to increase their security, or we change vendors, or the business accepts the risk. They sign off on this document accepting the risk that tomorrow, if there's an incident that occurs from that particular vendor, that business team will be responsible and not the CISO team or the security. So that's a practice that we've seen implemented at one of our customers, and it's done really well for them because they can shift that risk to the relevant teams. And then, of course, the relevant team generally doesn't want to take the risk, so they will push back on the vendor. The vendor will go get a bunch of security audits done, use a platform like ours for monitoring, and will hopefully increase their score. And these scores for your, so we also have scoring for yourself. So we also have security ratings for the company itself. So you can see over here, we have a 40 on 100 for brand protection, and it tells you why. It tells you why your score is low, right? So review existing phishing pages and request takedowns or accept the risks, review fake applications, review existing domain spotting. So it's telling you what you need to do to improve your score. So the same way, if I look at vulnerabilities, it says that there are some high-risk vulnerabilities open, please close those. There are some high-risk ports open from on the internet, so please close those. So it will track all of that for you. And then when you click through, it will take you to the relevant section where you can see what is currently open. You can decide if you want to action it, you want to accept the risk, or what you want to do. And it will obviously update accordingly. So you can then say, hey, we want to fix this to be closed. It's an accepted risk. You can assign it to a particular team member. You can create a custom tag to document who owns it or what is it used for. You can add a comment. You can assign it to somebody. So a lot of workflows built in to help with mitigation and addressing these issues. So that's another part of what we're looking at. Now, going back to the deck, right? I'll talk about one of the other use cases. The last use case before I sort of talk a little bit more about the platform is something that's super, super common, right? I'm sure I would say about 95% of your companies would have seen these incidents, which is the business email compromise or fake invoice scams, right? And in this case, you can see there was an example where a Toyota subsidiary lost about $39 million based on this particular issue. What happened here was a phishing email was sent. Using a phishing email, they could compromise certain employees' email addresses. They could compromise an employee's email address. They used that email address to see the mail thread. They then registered a domain that was similar, right? So what they do is register a domain with L instead of an I, or a 0 instead of an O, or some version of your domain. So it's very, very close to your domain. And they sent a fake email from there to the partner's finance team saying, hey, we have changed our bank account because there's a problem with our current bank and we're working on rectifying it. Can you please transfer the money to this particular account related to this invoice, right? And when they did that, in this case, and we see this every week, right? Successfully, they were able to get that finance team to actually transfer $37.3 million to that hacker's bank account. from where it went through different bank accounts, different bank mules, and eventually turned into cryptocurrency and disappeared. Very, very hard for money to ever come back from these scenarios. Now, how does Shadowmap help you protect from these scenarios as well? Right? So I'll sort of touch upon that as well. So we have a module called brand protection, where we look at a lot of different areas, right? So we look at phishing impersonation. So if there are any pages on the internet that use your logo, your keywords, your domains, anything of that sort, immediately alerts will come. So if the hacker goes and sets up a phishing page, by the time they have made the phishing page, an alert should come to you saying this phishing page is online. And you can then review it and you can say maybe it's accepted, maybe it's just one of your partners using your logo. You can say we have reviewed it, we don't want to, there's nothing worrying here, it's just some harmless website. Or if it is a legitimate phishing page, brand infringement, fake site, fake job site, etc., trigger a takedown. Again, select your reason, copyright, brand infringement, fraud, phishing, etc. Trigger a takedown, and within 24 to 48 hours, that domain posting should be taken offline. So the first step is, as soon as a phishing page gets set up, we will pick it up. Even before your email solution, threat intel, anybody else has picked it up, we will detect it because we're scanning the whole of the internet every day. And for your keywords, we're scanning multiple times a day. And throw alerts to you to let you know that it has happened. Second, we have integrations available. So you can actually integrate with your Azure AD or your Microsoft Exchange to start blacklisting the bad domains automatically. So second, you request the takedown. It can also add it through the API into your Microsoft Exchange bad domains, blacklisted domains, so that anybody sending an email from these domains will just not come to you. Because so then if anybody is using one of these spoof domains or bad domains, immediately that email will not land in anybody's inbox. So the chances of it happening are very low. So to the first part of the problem, we can solve this particular part by detecting phishing pages and raising an alert. Second, they register a new or similar domain and try to send the spoofed email. We have a section called domain spotting, where we track every variation of your domain name. So we track it with an A or without an A, and every single variation of your domain name is tracked. So in this case, you can see the keyword that was used and what we have monitored for. And you can't even tell the difference, right? But every single variation that is there is tracked. And immediately an alert will be thrown out to you saying somebody has registered a domain that is similar to yours. You can blacklist this automatically on your exchange so that any domain that is not owned by you gets blacklisted. So you say it is owned by you, you would just say accepted and the alert will go away. Not owned by you, you would flag it as such and it would track it. Right? So I'm just pulling, say, shadowmap.com as an example here to show you that example data, right? So anywhere you can see shadowmap.com is used in different places. In the title it was used, or in the domain it was used, anything of that sort, immediately alerts will get picked up and will shoot out back to the customer so that they can go and blacklist. So the key here is to make sure that every time somebody registers a domain that is close to yours, before it is even abused, we have picked it up, thrown alerts to you, let you know, blacklisted it on your exchange, and the issue is addressed. So that's the other piece of what we're looking at, right? Now, going back to the big picture of the platforms, of course, I'm going to answer any questions that you all have, and we're going to sort of run through that bit as well. There are a few modules that I won't have touched upon, and I'll try to sort of just quickly cover those as well, right? So, like I said earlier, we cover a lot of areas, right? We have SLAs built into the platform, so you can actually create your own SLAs that say, if high-risk vulnerability comes online, if it does not get closed within X period of time, we can trigger an SLA alert, right? So I'll show you an example here, high-risk alert. So if the risk is high, it will automatically trigger an alert to this email. If the email does not fix it within 6 days, it will trigger an alert to some other email, some other user, and you can choose, do you want it to go through an email, do you want it to go through SIM, do you want it to go through some other channel, right? Up to you how you want that alert to go. And you will see there are many more integrations available, but as an example, we have Slack, we have Teams, we have PagerDuty, we have SIM integration through Syslog, we have Jira, we have ServiceNow. So there are dozens of platforms that we support. And once you configure it, automatically, as soon as a new alert comes, it can go to that relevant Jira account. You can give us read-only credentials, or you can give us read-write credentials. You can decide what access we have. And based on that, it will shoot the alerts out to the different people. We also have cloud integrations built into the platform. So if you use any public cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, GCP, Cloudflare, etc., we can actually integrate with them and pull data from them. So if tomorrow there is a new Azure instance that somebody has spun up, or a new Azure blob that somebody has spun up, immediately we would know that that has happened because we have the API integration as well. We would anyway be scanning the internet, but assume there's a S3 bucket that somebody creates. So I go to the S3 bucket section for context, right? There's an S3 bucket that somebody creates, but imagine they don't use any of your keywords. The files don't contain your keywords. The name doesn't contain your keywords. It just says abc.s3.amazon.aws.com, right? Then of course, any monitoring platform would not be able to find it. What we can do in this case is we can make sure that anytime, because we have the integration in place, we can make sure that as soon as that happens, an immediate alert will shoot out to you that a new bucket has been created that does not have any keywords. It will get added to Shadowmap. It will get monitored. And then if there are public files available, if there is write access available, there is sensitive data available, CSV files, SQL files, etc. Immediately alerts will shoot out. You will see it in the dashboard. You will see alerts coming, risk ratings coming, so that any of this stuff before it is abused, from a few minutes from when it is created and the data is added, we've picked it up, alerts have shot out, and action can be taken. So there's a whole bunch of integrations available within the platform to help track that. We also have a BI capability. So we also have a business intelligence platform that is integrated into Shadowmap. Sorry about that. So we also have a BI platform that is integrated into Shadowmap, where you can actually integrate your BI platform into that. Our BI platform as part of your as part of the Shadowmap monitoring, and through that BI platform, we can then create custom dashboards. So, say for example, you want a dashboard for your management that only includes SLA details, or you want a dashboard that shows graphs around a particular type of issue. So you can actually create those dashboards, those alerts as part of your BI platform. And once it is created in your BI platform, it can actually be added or embedded into your dashboard itself. So your senior management, senior leadership can get summarized reports, graphs, summary data, whatever they want, right? How many phishing pages came out, or whatever they want to know, how a number of days till we're closing high-risk vulnerabilities. So all that they can track in real time, and they'll be able to throw alerts to you. They'll get summaries in real time in the dashboard itself, and as an email or a summary email coming to them as well, which will also include Excel trackers, CSV files, all of that for their reference. We also generate reports on the platform. So we also have reports that are for every single day as your scan runs. In this case, of course, demo portals will be 2 or 3 reports. But otherwise, every single day there's a report created, and the report will tell you that today this is the PDF report with all the different issues. This is the Excel tracker, a differential report, summary report, and so on. And then you can see in the report all of the details are summarized. So if you want to share this with any third party, anybody of that sort, you can see exactly what Shadowmap found, how many subdomains, how many IP addresses, internal subdomains, test domains, what applications were there, what vulnerabilities were there. So all of that you can track as part of your platform centrally, and therefore you are completely aware of these things as they come online. And yeah, the PDF reports help in terms of format. Every single part of the platform will have exports available to you. So you can export Excel trackers, you can create different views, things of that nature. We also track a lot of other data points, right? So I have just showed you some of the really important data points. We also track things like single sign-on trackers. For example, we use Cloudflare for single sign-on zero trust. So we track those. We track third-party JS trackers. So if you're using any third-party JS libraries, we can track that. So if GDPR is a concern, then that will help you there. We track what ports are open. We track your asset inventory, what's currently open, subdomains, internal subdomains, IP addresses, so all of those aspects, right? Another area that I didn't touch upon is executive leadership. So we actually have a module for executive leadership. So you can add your executives. So in this case, for example, somebody from our team, right? You can add any number of executives from your team. And as you add them, we'll monitor the internet for them. If their information gets published, if their data gets published, passwords get published, social media accounts get faked or fake accounts, etc. Any of that happens, immediately alerts will come to you, right? So if I click on any of one of the executives, it will then show me which passwords of this particular user are compromised, from which platform they got compromised. So that way, any of your senior leadership, you are immediately aware if something is impacting them, right? So tomorrow, if their computers compromised by malware, you can add that as a monitoring. If you want to monitor any, underground chat, forums, Telegram, anybody is discussing that person's phone number, email, name, etc., you get alerts. If there are fake social media accounts, you get alerts. So the idea is that any of this information, if it leaks, and you can add their personal email addresses. If they're on the board of a different company, you can add that email address. So if I click through here, you can see you can add a range of different parameters. So that, because obviously for senior leadership, you want to make sure you're not just monitoring their known emails, but also the other emails, right? Any personal emails, etc. Because a CXO getting compromised on their personal email might be as bad for the organization as a corporate email, right? We don't know what kind of data is there. Same way we track fake applications, the app store. So there's a lot of different areas that we're tracking. URL shorteners, we're tracking Telegram conversations, any dark web chatter that's happening related to you. And for threat intelligence, you also get a daily summary email. So every day, if you say, for example, one of our customers is a large global dairy company, right? About 30 to 40 global subsidiaries with 30 to 40 different CISOs. We actually can send these threat intelligence emails to each of their different teams based on their country, their geography, their industry. So if they have a subsidiary that is doing manufacturing in Germany, they will get an email of threats that are targeting manufacturing businesses in Germany, new vulnerabilities that are impacted related to their organization. If you have a marketing unit sitting in China, we'll track that separately, notify those folks of that relevant alert. So it's extremely customized to make sure that the right alerts are going to the right people so that they're aware of the threat and then they can take relevant action that needs to be taken. So I think I've covered most of what I wanted to cover as part of the webinar. Of course, I'm assuming I have talked a whole lot about a lot of different things. So I'm assuming there will be some questions. So hopefully I can, of course, answer those for you now. Anna, do you want to take over now?
Thank you so much, Yash, for that insightful session and the Shadowmac platform demo. Now let's start with the Q&A. Is there any other questions that you would like to ask us? Okay. Is there any more questions? Okay. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. We'll be sending the recorded session. Yeah, we have one more question. From Asim, we have a question. Yash, can we have a look at it? What is
Sure.
going to, yeah.
So any domain or website that's been whitelisted, we are still tracking for change. So even if you whitelist a website, we don't ignore it. We keep scanning it every day. If there is a change, we see what kind of change is there. If it is a very cursory change, then no alert will come. If it is a significant change, it will come back into the needs review queue so that we tell you that the change has happened, you can review it. We also have a capability which is tracking for defacements, malware compromise, anything of that sort, right? So if for some reason one of your websites has been compromised, somebody has injected some, JavaScript malware or defacement, anything of that sort, immediately that would get picked up based on different keywords and signatures, and then alert would shoot out saying that we believe this website has been defaced or compromised, and an immediate notification would take place for that.
We've got one more question.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was just reading the question. So I think covering Syed's question. Yes, so we track, you can configure the keywords, the logos, the trademarks, what you want to monitor as part of the platform. So there are 2-3 different ways in which this works. One, we create what's called a website watermark based on your website. So as we are doing attack surface management also, we actually know what your websites look like. So we create signatures from that. And when we do our internet-wide scanning, we track to see if any other websites are using the same signature. And when I say signature, it could mean maybe they're using your image, they're using your logo, your fave icon, your keywords, your content. So we can track those different parameters. Based on that, we will score it and say that, yes, we believe this is an impersonation where they have used enough logo, keywords, etc., that we believe that this is somebody who is trying to impersonate you, pretend to be you, maybe for fake job scams or phishing sites or fake e-commerce websites, which we see very often, things like that. And then alert would come to you. Your team you would get an alert, your SOC would get an alert, depending on how you configure it. And once you have approved it as a fake site, confirm that it's not legitimate, we would be able to then do a takedown and actually have it taken offline. For some customers, we also offer managed services where our people are sitting full time as part of their monitoring teams. So in that case, our team would directly check in their CMDB, confirm it is not legitimate, and then go ahead with the takedown as well. So they won't have to wait for an approval per se. Yeah. Okay. So sure. So there's another question around customers in the UAE. I think that's something that maybe the Novatic team, 7C team can take offline and maybe share some details around it.
If there are any questions, please raise your hands and we'll unmute you. Any more questions?
Yeah, I think Abdullah shared a question. So the platform itself works completely from the outside. So it would not have any interaction or issues with any of the products that you are using right now. But when you do integrations, so say, for example, you're doing an integration with Microsoft Entra for credential checking on dark web or any of those integrations or Azure integrations, we would use a read-only service account, which will be given appropriate permissions, etc. So it would not cause any issues with Defender or any other platforms. Yeah, so there would be no conflict there per se. We also do share, so for each customer we have for the platform, we deploy them in different nodes in the world. So some customers are deployed in their India node, some are in the German node, some are in the UAE node, etc. Based on where your organization is and where you prefer your data to be for data localization. So we would also share IP addresses of those nodes to you so that you can have them whitelisted on your SOC. So that obviously, as we are scanning your footprint, scanning for vulnerabilities, it might trigger alerts and events into your SIM or your SOC team, right? So then they're aware that this is coming from a legitimate platform, and they can then obviously exclude for those. There's another question. I'll try to answer that as well. So data in the dark web for Bitcoin. So dark web data generally cannot be taken down. It's the inherent challenge with the dark web. But at the same time, what happens is, if you look at any dark web site, right? If you look at 90% of dark web posts that take place, the links themselves are in the clear web. So what happens is they will go to a .onion website or whatever and host the data. but the actual sample data or your files, etc., are generally posted on a normal server or a file hosting server like Dropbox or any of those services. So generally, what we do with customers is if they have data that is leaked, that is available on these sites, we will get those URLs taken offline, the ones that are actually hosting the data wherever possible. There is no guarantee with these sort of takedowns because they're using bulletproof services, etc. But in a lot of cases, we are able to successfully do it. So that's one, to get those taken offline as soon as possible. Because if you look at most ransomware sites or any of those players, the challenge is that to host, to if they have stolen 20 GB of your data, to share that 20 GB through Tor or Bitcoin, through Tor or any dark website is very difficult because it's slow. So they tend to share links for clear webnet sites, and those ones we can get taken down immediately. And it's a game of cat and mouse, right? They upload to a different site, we again take it down. So after 2-3 attempts, they generally give up and will move on to somebody else who is easier to compromise for them. How long will it take to take down a fake domain or website? So generally, it'll takedowns can be done for many different areas, right? So we do social media takedowns, we do GitHub takedowns, phishing site takedowns, etc. For websites or fake domains, it's generally 24 to 48 hours is the SLA timeline that we provide. So 48 hours is the SLA that we provide, and it almost always gets done within 48 hours. In the 10% edge case is when there is a bulletproof hosting or a known bad hosting provider used, where we then have to escalate to their upstream bandwidth provider and get it taken offline. So it generally gets taken offline, but in those cases, it might take about 5 days to a week as well, if it's a bulletproof hosting provider. But generally, I would say about 48 hours to get it taken. And again, to preface that thought, there has to be a legal basis to take down. Somebody buying a domain with your name is not enough. It has to be trademarked, for example, or they have to use your logo, your name, they have to impersonate you. There has to be some legal basis for us to do the takedown. Any other questions, anybody?
There are no more questions, I guess. So thank you all for attending today's webinar. We'll be sending the recorded session to a registered email address, and we hope this session was very valuable to you, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. Thanks once again and have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.